All right, everyone, let's do this. How are you? Are you good? You should be good. It's Friday, unless you got to work tonight, then, or this weekend, and it probably sucks for you. But anyway, while you're working, you should check this podcast out. Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? If you're new here, bienvenidos. That means welcome. On the show today, Paul Chinook. Paul is an actor, producer, and writer of the movie February's Dog. You can find this movie on Tubi, Vudu, Apple TV, and Google Play, and I highly suggest you check it out. Paul and I had a great conversation. He told me how he got into the movie business, how he went about making this movie because it was made during the pandemic, and what he's got planned. He's got a couple of short films, a documentary. He now makes his home in Texas, but he's originally from Calgary, Alberta, which is where February's Dog was filmed. Anyway, I had a lot of fun. It was good getting to know him. We've been talking a little over the last few weeks. We finally made some time to do this, and it was a really cool conversation. Let's check it out. All right, man. You ready to do this?
Let's do it. Yes, sir.
All right. Tell everyone who you are, man.
Hi, my name is Paul Chinook. I'm the writer, producer, and one of the actors in the film that was just recently released on Tubi called February's Dog.
Right on. And the movie is based in Alberta, which is where you're from, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Right on. Tell me a little bit about the title.
So the title February's Dog is kind of a mashup of two things. So February is the hardest month to make it through as a Canadian because it's cold, it's dark, it just doesn't seem like winter's going to end. And the black dog of depression. So February's Dog is, making it through the dog month of February.
Okay. Yeah. I thought after our conversation the other day, I started to put it together, but I wanted to make sure that I asked you before. I assumed that's what it was about.
Excellent.
The whole month of February, I didn't know that about that being the hardest month, to get through in Canada.
It is, man. Like sometimes winter will come in at October, November, and you want to have a white Christmas when you're in Canada and you live up north. And then come January, by the end of January, you're like, all right, we're kind of done with winter now. And sometimes winter doesn't end up in Canada till April. So like February, but at least the days start getting longer by about May. So in February, the sun's going down at 4 PM. You get up to go to work. It's dark. You start making your way home and it's dark. And yeah, it's a tough month.
Yeah. I did a tour with a band. I worked for a band out of Toronto. We did a tour, a Canadian tour. We were hitting places like Thunder Bay in the middle of winter. And I'm like,
oh, Bernie, you got an authentic taste of Canada, sir. How'd you like that?
Anyone coming out and the place would be packed,
Right.
So it was really cool.
Yeah, I guess when you're from the South, when you get up to a Canadian winter, you must think it's a state of emergency. Nobody's going to go out. It's just another day for them.
I know a few snowflakes fall in Texas and they shut down the city.
Oh, yeah. Like I moved to Texas, Houston 5 years ago. And it's funny because as a Canadian, we're all worried. Everybody called me, oh, aren't you concerned living that close to the coast of hurricanes? And it's like, well, it doesn't seem like anybody else here is worried about them, but they're terrified of an inch of snow, right? And meanwhile, Canada's frozen and roads are solid ice for 6 months out of the year in Canada.
Yeah, when I first started coming up here, I was hanging out with some friends one day. And we were walking around where I live in Jersey City. And I was like, man, that smells like a tornado. And they started laughing at me. And then my friend's husband called her and she's like, two tornadoes just touched down.
Oh, wow. You got that nose for it.
Yeah, we grew up in it right there in Tornado Alley, so right. You kind of feel it. It's maybe not the smell of it, but I guess, But
now, Bernie, I got a couple questions for you if you don't mind.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What was the
I'll let you Bogart
Canadian? What was the oddest Canadian city name that you went to? That sticks out in your mind.
Well, Thunder Bay, Banff.
Oh, you've been to Banff.
I've been to Banff. That's like a little. I don't want to use the word hippie, but it's very like an artist community.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to live 20 minutes outside of Banff. I'm very familiar with it.
And I remember getting out of the bus and they can't see me, but like the snow being this high, like
right, yeah.
So I mean, oddest name city or just oddest cities?
Well, I'm just curious because there's like places called Moose Factory and Wawa, and uh,
I've been to
there's a place
Wawa.
in Newfoundland called Dill. Oh, you've been to Wawa?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
but not Moose Factory. I've never been there. That's a cool band name.
No, yeah. There's some pretty unique Canadian city names. I was just curious, but yeah, that's interesting. And
Yeah,
what was?
so
Did you get exposed to any like traditional Canadian food? Like, did you have any poutine, sir?
poutine. I realized that in Montreal, hot dogs are a big thing.
Oh, and they do another like that's a whole nother level of hot dog, isn't
It
it?
is, it is. But I did when I first started going to Canada, the poutine. I had never been out of the United States. Canada was the first place I went, and so when I first started doing this for a living, it was so I was looking for whatever I was familiar with here. But
Yeah,
once the locals get you, out, but poutine's a big favorite. You know,
yeah. Isn't it fascinating? Like, I think we both grow up in Canada and the States thinking there's so many similarities till you actually go to that other country and realize, wow, this is actually another country. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. And then you start exploring other countries and you realize, well, we're all very much alike, but we all got our own things going on.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
And I used to love going to Canada. I haven't been I was there last summer for a day.
Hmm.
It was in Toronto, but like I said, I used to work for a band based out of Toronto, so everything we did started there. So
Which band are you allowed to say?
yeah, it was a band called Death from Above, 1979. Two-piece
Oh,
rock
okay.
band. Yeah. So I would fly to YYZ, start
Uh-huh.
everything there, and then sometimes fly there, do a couple of days rehearsal, and then come back to the US or fly there and
Hmm.
do. And of course I work for Duran Duran and they have a big presence there. So
They do.
yeah.
I grew up on Duran Duran as a Canadian. Yes, sir.
Oh, right on. I didn't
Yeah.
for some reason I thought you were out on the West Coast. Had I known you were in Houston, we were just in Houston not long ago.
Yeah, I moved to Houston 5 years ago, originally from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So that's the Canadian province that's just north of Montana. And yeah, lived down pretty much 20 minutes out of Galveston down in Houston. I was blown away by how big Houston is when I first moved there.
Yeah. Huge, right?
Oh,
I think it's
it,
at one point when I was growing up, it was the worst traffic in the US was Houston, Texas.
I could see that. I mean, I think they've done wonderful construction to alleviate that. But yeah, there's 8 million people trying to get somewhere in that city.
Yeah. Why Texas? Houston in particular.
Well, I got transferred down here from my regular line of work, which is oil field work. I'm essentially a drilling rigs IT guy. That's where I'm at right now. And when I got transferred down here, it made more sense to me to be based out of Houston to get flights back to Canada in case I ever wanted to go visit because Houston's got an international airport.
Hmm.
And growing up in Alberta, just north of Montana, being right in the middle of a continent, I'd never really lived anywhere near a large body of water. So I thought it'd be pretty novel to be living in a city that was on the coast.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're down near Galveston with Kima, I think you told me, right?
Yeah, 10 minutes out of Kima. I'm like 2 minutes from the Johnson Space Center, so it's a lovely, lovely area to live in.
Yeah, before I did this, I worked for a theater chain called Cinemark, and I delivered movie prints. And my route, this is before they all went to hard drive, digital hard
Uh
drive. I would still take the reels of film,
huh.
and my route was all Houston. So I'd go all the way down into Webster and come up
Wow.
through Pasadena, back around.
Hmm.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's all digital now. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So do you like it where you are?
I love it. I really do. I love it. Like Texas is just such a amazing state. There's so much history, so much to see. The difference in towns, like, you go from Houston to San Antonio to Midland and down to El Paso, and there's just such, they're so diverse, so different, so incredible, wonderful people. It's a little hot in the summer, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
being
you guys
it,
are having record heat right now, right?
yeah, and it doesn't go away. It just gets dark.
I was
Yeah.
in Vegas last summer, and I was walking back to my hotel at midnight, and it was 105
Wow.
at midnight. So I don't miss the Texas summers. But I mean, it gets hot here where I'm living now too, just not
Uh-huh.
as hot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something else, the Texas heat. Yeah.
So, a guy in your industry, how do you get involved in the movie business?
It's an interesting story. I didn't really mean to. So I guess it'd be about 10 years ago now. When I was living in Calgary, there was a fellow that lived down the street from me that was making a pilot for a project that he was working on. And I had a 66 Mustang at the time. And when he found out about that, he wanted to use it for some burnouts and some other scenes for his project he was working on. So I said, yeah, sure. And I went there for the day and we did some burnouts and improvised some lines and shot some scenes. And one of his friends, Angela, walked up to me afterwards and said, hey, you're really good at this. How come I've never seen you on set before? And I said, well, you're too kind. I have no idea what I'm doing. So she said, well, if you want to give it a whirl, here's my agent's phone number. So I got in touch with Carla Brown at Platinum Talent in Calgary, and she gave me a chance. And I was incredibly lucky. The first year that I even started as a background actor, I was on Hell on Wheels, another program out of Canada called Young Drunk Punk that was a lot of fun with Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall. I don't know if they ever
Yeah.
really caught on down here, but Kids in the Hall was huge in Canada when I grew up. So getting to be on TV with him was really cool.
I'm crushing
Yeah,
your dream.
exactly. I crush you. I crush you, man. You know, yes, sir, Bernie. When you started doing that, I'm like, what's that? Then when you said that, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. They caught on for a bit down here. They had a show on HBO. Anyway,
awesome. Yeah.
sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no, yeah. So I got really lucky in my first year, and then I just it kind of took off from there. I mean, it's such a magical experience to be able to get on set and create with other people, and uh, I think what really hooked me, Bernie, was my first day on Hell on Wheels. When you walk into a town that's from the 1800s, it's all built like you go into the saloon and there's a real saloon in there, right? And they dress everybody from the 1800s, and it's as close to time travel as I think you can actually pull off right now. And man, that just had me hooked. Like that was just so much fun. So I just kept thinking, well, what can I do next? And being in Canada, in Calgary, we're really blessed with how many productions come there. But
Uh-huh.
one of the problems that I see is that, and I get it now because I produced one of my own films, February's Dog, is that productions do all their casting before they come there for the most part. So they do auditions in the local region, but they already cast that position that you're auditioning for. Now, in my opinion, I'm kind of guessing, but you have to beat the person that already has the job to get the job. So me and a lot of my friends would do all these auditions. We would watch the TV show or movie that we auditioned for, and to be somebody that we've never seen before that got the role. And that's when I started to figure it out. And so I thought, well, if we just start shooting our own stuff, nobody can say no to us.
All right. She's like, take it into our own hands.
Yeah, sounded simple at the time.
It always does, right?
Right?
I'll just
If
do
you
this
just
on my
say
own.
only before you do anything, it sounds easy.
So, when did you start writing February's Dog? Was this your
Mm,
first production?
it's the second one I wrote, but the first one that we did get produced. Yes,
Okay.
sir. So I wrote it, I guess, 5 years ago, and it was kind of a blessing and a curse because we got the second round of filming done just the December before COVID rocked the planet. So why I say it was a blessing and a curse was it made editing incredibly difficult because I couldn't just go back up to Canada to sit in a room with my editor once borders started getting closed and
Yeah.
all the quarantines were happening. So we had to try to figure out a way to do remote editing, which I think we did a really good job of. And we didn't really have any kind of roadmap because nobody really had to do that type of editing before. Usually you'd sit in a room and watch footage and go, yeah, that works, that doesn't. Whereas he'd have to put together whole segments and send them over to me. And I didn't have the raw footage. So I just had to, ask questions and guess. And we pieced a pretty solid film together, I think. I think my editor, Jordy Day, did a wonderful job. And then the blessing part of the COVID came when I was actually able to attend the Cannes Marché de Film and some of the other big markets because they were all virtual and online. And, going into them as a rookie who didn't know anybody, didn't know anything, it really put me on a whole lot more of a even playing field with the 20-year veterans in the industry when everybody's trying to figure out how these Zoom meetings work. Everybody's trying to figure out how this new virtual meeting for a market was working. So where I probably wouldn't have got, a meeting with some of these people before, they were scrambling and out of their element. So that's kind of where the blessing came in and how we kind of caught a little bit of a win there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was one of the there was a lot of cons during the pandemic, but one of the pros was that it put everyone on the same playing field. Didn't matter how famous you were or how not famous you were, everybody was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I think now that we've come through the other side of it, because so many people consume so much entertainment, that it is a bit of a blessing for us indie filmmakers because there's a market for what we do now, maybe a bit of a stronger market since so many people. I mean, when you don't go to work and everything else has been taken from you, how many people just sat there? Like Netflix and streaming went up by how much, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all the majors, like they were really burning through content. So
yeah.
um when you get to the end of Netflix or the end of Hulu, you're like, now what? So that's where guys like myself come in.
Right on, man. Well, I watched the movie twice, and your editor did do it. To me, I love film and I love watching independent movies. A lot of times when you find an independent movie like yours, they didn't trim the fat and they want to get everything in. It's almost like a new band going in the studio, like, no, I need to put this 3 minute intro before the song. The producer's telling them, like, no, you only got 3 minutes to get your message across. And that's what I liked about your movie, because I went into it completely just not knowing what it was about. I watched your trailer and I liked it, so I went into it just open minded, and I was like, wow, that movie kept me into it the whole time. There was no like, well, let me check my phone because they're just talking way too much. This conversation's going nowhere. It just kept me going on it, man. So I like that about it. Uh, what I think is the message of the movie really hit close to home for me. That you got three main. I don't want to give it away, but we'll talk. We have to talk about it. You got three main characters,
Yeah.
kind of going through their own existential crisis, and they're all handling it different.
Hmm.
Was any of that like from experience, or was any of that like is it all just come out of your imagination?
It's a lot from experience. So there's a lot of personal stories of mine and really close friends of mine, all kind of woven together through different characters. So while it's not actually, I hope I get this right, autobibliographical of any one particular person, there's a lot of truth in there. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. And it was also quite an honor to be able to go back to friends of mine that had incredibly challenging points in their life and said, I didn't forget. And I actually put it in a film.
Hmm.
And a few of my friends actually said, thank you for that, because it really helped give them closure on it, to see that they've, to be able to watch a movie and recognize that they lived parts of that film, and to see that they've made it to the other side and that they don't feel that, or they don't see those issues in their life anymore.
Yeah,
So it was quite an honor to be able to offer that to friends of mine,
yeah,
to include them, even little segments of their life, and they could see that. And
yeah. Right off the bat, when the movie starts, you meet the two main characters, Nigel and Dale, who you play. I'm going to give that away. Uh, and
yes,
e-
sir.
everyone, I think, who's been in that industry or industry like that has had that day where you're just going about your day, and then you get the news, hey, come into the office, we have to talk to you. And you see right off the bat how Dale handles it, like, oh, I'm getting a 2 month vacation. Nigel's handling it in a different way, but sees the silver lining, but is still kind of very cautious. And then you meet your third character, I believe his name is Jed, who comes out of nowhere, and you don't even know what he's going through till that scene. And the way you kind of told that story, it's like it's different, but I'll tell you what it's like. Like when I went to see From Dusk Till Dawn the first time at the movie theater, the trailer didn't tell you there was fucking vampires. You know? So when that happens in the movie, you're like, what's going on? So yeah, so you see this guy Jed, who's just happy-go-lucky guy, and then his
Hmm.
life is just full of turmoil that he's just not telling anyone, and he's just burying
Yeah,
it. So I mean, I like the way you told those stories, man, and how they all handled what was going on in their lives differently. And
I really
ultimately,
appreciate that. And I think we got a lot of gold because my style, being the writer and producer of it, when I was casting for the different roles, was to tell people straight up front, look, just because I wrote it doesn't mean You have to recite it word for word. Like take the character and make it yours. Like I explained to people, my view of it is as a writer is I'm like the architect. Like I design a building and I design a room. And then if we give you the job of the accountant in that room, man, I'm not there to decorate your office. That's your job. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you tell me where that desk goes. You tell me what's going to be on that desk. I'm just telling you, here's how you fit into the organization. Or in a film, that's what your character does, and this is what your character has to achieve throughout the story. And I would have to say 70% of the time, the recommendations from the actors of, I think my character would do this or that, that my eyes were really open to the fact that when you're working in a creative capacity, you have to leave the room for others to create. You can't, I don't, unless, I mean, you're redoing Abraham Lincoln given the a famous speech that we all know. You
Yeah.
don't really have artistic license in that capacity, but you have to give people room to explore that character and see what works for them. And I think that's why we really got a lot, why you see such a genuine connection with a lot of those actors with their characters.
Yeah. And were these friends of yours, like from the same community, acting community, or did you guys have people come in and audition? You know?
I basically I offered the role to everybody. So it was when you've got a small production, it's incredibly expensive and time consuming to do some of those things. And when I originally set out to get the film done, I wanted to work with a bunch of friends of mine, and I wanted to offer friends of mine that I worked with in the film industry in Calgary a chance to show that they had the potential to, earn more than just a background role or earn more than just three lines as a cop walking through or something like that, that we do have the ability to actually deliver a powerful movie. So, and I think everybody gave their best, and I'm incredibly honored that we all managed to pull that off.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know what your budget was for the movie, but it's a really good movie. What message are you trying to get out with this movie?
With the film, we're trying to get out the message of mental health and connecting with others that, I think without giving the film away, actually, what I can say is when we did our test audience, so after we got our first draft of the film done, and it was still during COVID, we brought together, I think it was 30 or 40 people to do a test audience of the film. And the largest comment we got back was, I'll have to get back to you. I have to call my mom. I have to get back to you. I have to call, so and so that. And that was really what I was aiming to accomplish, was to kind of gently rock people or aggressively rock people out of their rut in life and go, we're important to other people. Like, are we connecting with each other enough? Do we care enough about the other person? Or are we just assuming that, Bernie's always in good spirits and nobody's checking on you?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the message. And I was really happy to hear that in our test audience, that really resonated. That the real message is we do way better when we're connected with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why in our modern society, with all the luxuries, conveniences, and technology that we have, the depression's never been higher, is because we're leaning more on our devices than we are the people around us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think of all the characters, I mean, Dale is my favorite because everybody knows Dale. Everybody has a friend like Dale, you know? Like you said,
Yeah, he's a golden retriever as a human, right?
yeah, nobody's worried about him. Like, oh, that's just
Yeah.
Dale, that's what he's gonna do, So I I, I if that's what you were trying to portray, that facade,
Hmm.
then you really hit the nail on the head with him, man.
I appreciate it. And that's kind of what we were trying to portray with Dale, was the guy who just, no matter what's going on, says, I'm fine, and doesn't really let anybody in. I guess you got to watch the film to find out why Dale's like that, but it's, and what that can potentially do to a person. But it's, I spoke with some different major mental health organizations in Canada to make sure that we didn't stereotype anything, misportray any kind of depression. And what they shared with me, I thought was incredibly powerful, was that there's 3 points that make up everybody's mental health in the world. And those 3 points are lifestyle, counseling, and prescriptions. And it's going to vary person to person and situation to situation, which one of those 3 points is most important to you. But like they told me, was that for a lot of men, that point of lifestyle is very important. And when I listen to other podcasts, hearing a lot of military veterans say that one of the most debilitating things for veterans is when they get out of the military, that they don't have a mission anymore. That that's kind of how a lot of guys feel. Like my dad, for instance, isn't a counseling person. You could sit him on a couch, and I don't think it's ever going to do him any good. What you need to do sometimes is grab a person like my dad, shake him by the shoulders, and go, when was the last time you worked out? When was the last time you had a regimented life? When was the last time you were, you got out there and accomplished stuff? And for some people, that's how you get them back on track. So it's a very, what I learned about mental health is it's an even more complex conversation than a lot of us understand on the surface.
And do you think that message will come out with this movie?
I hope so. If not, at least the conversation about it, about, is Bernie doing okay? Like, have I talked to him enough? Is Paul doing okay? And just like what we had with our test audiences, is have people watch the film and go, I don't want that to happen to people in my life.
But man,
Yeah.
so you haven't been doing this long. You haven't been in this movie racket very long.
Nope. And it was really funny. So most of us in the film, that was our first speaking role. So it was friends of mine that had a production company in Calgary that agreed to film February's Dog for us. And I think it was day 2. We were on set. We were in between scenes, turning things around. And they were asking us, oh, well, what else have you been in with me and Quinn, who plays my wife, Emily? And we both kind of looked at each other. We're like, nothing. And they know me because they're friends of mine. They're like, well, that's a lie. We know you've been on commercials before. I'm like, yeah, but I've never had a line before. And both their jaws just hit the floor. They're like, you mean to tell me you've never had a line in a film before, and you just wrote a script that you're going to star in? I'm like, yeah, is it going okay? And they're like, yeah, but I think a lot of it came down to the fact that given the opportunity, we all worked really hard. Like, we all did a lot of rehearsals over the phone because I was in Houston. And by the time we got to set, we were all very familiar with who each other had made for the character that they were going to play. We were very familiar with each other's timing. And I think that it was all that extra work that we put in that really made a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there was an honest connection. What's that?
How long did it take to film the movie?
So it took a total of 2 weeks. We did it over 2 segments to make it look like it plays out over 18 months. And we got incredibly lucky with the weather in Canada, that we got snow at the right time, we got sunshine at the right time, and that the weather participated fantastically for us.
2 weeks, man. That's really, I guess that's indie filmmaking.
It is. Like, one of the biggest differences between indie filmmaking and the big studios is just how much time you have. Money equals time. The more money you have, the more time you have. So with indie filmmaking, from my experience, you really got to rehearse. You really got to master your planning down, so that when you do get to set, because it's expensive when you've got a crew standing around, if you're still trying to hash out some details, like, you want to get as much of that ironed out as possible.
Yeah, yeah. What are you working on now?
I've got 2 short films and a documentary I'm currently working on. So we're going to shoot one more short film up in Canada titled Hello Baby Girl, and a short film in Texas that's titled Ultima Deceptio, and then a documentary that I'm putting together as well. So the reason why I'm doing 2 short films after a feature is, while I'm quite impressed with how the film turned out artistically, I still have a lot to learn business wise. It's a whole industry to itself. So what I'd like to do is get a couple short films under my belt, get a little bit more networking, a little bit better understanding of some of the business things, so that we flow through our production better, and aim for a $2 to $5 million budget feature afterwards. So build up some of that credibility required to take that step. It's kind of what I learned, that's where you're going to be able to, $2 to $5 million budget film is where you're going to start to have the potential to earn some significant cash.
Yeah. Do you have an idea for that big budget?
I've got 7 films written and 4 TV series. So yeah, it is just a matter of getting the money on board.
Right on. So, like I said, you haven't been doing this long, and now you've just kind of fallen into it. Do you feel like this was your calling all along when you drove your Mustang up on the set that day?
I didn't know it that day, but I discovered that I knew I loved being on set as soon as I was on Hell on Wheels. It's just like my regular job in the oil field I have right now, that they're long, grueling days, but you just can't even pull the smile off my face. It's just such a cool experience to be able to get out there and create and see the sparkle in other people's eyes as they're delivering lines that they never thought they'd master, or drawing out the raw emotion to pull off a scene once they're done, and to see that look of satisfaction, probably quite similar to music wise when you see a guitar player play an incredibly challenging riff for the first
Yeah.
time and just go, my God, I did it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's we're very blessed to be able to work even part-time on creative endeavors.
Exactly, right? I always say it's a privilege to do what we do.
It's incredibly challenging getting your first film done. And when I got to the film festivals that we did get into, you start to realize that you're not special, that it takes like a series of miracles to even get any film done.
Yeah.
Uh, but when you're doing it on your own, you think, oh my God, we must have done something wrong because everything was challenging. And then, you listen to other podcasts of big producers like, uh, can I mention another podcast on your
Yeah,
show?
yeah, yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So, Todd Garner. Oh, I got that right. The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner. And when you listen to him, and like he was a co-president at Disney, and when you hear that it took small chain of miracles to even get a big studio production done, that I was like, oh, okay, so this is just how this industry works, right? I'm not special. It's incredibly challenging, but when you get it done right, it's such a rewarding feeling.
What advice would you give to someone that if someone came up to you and was like, "Man, I loved your movie. How can I make a movie?" Or
First
I've got an
advice I would
idea,
tell them is take your time. I think the biggest mistake most, if not all, first-time filmmakers make is rushing to get to set. That you're just like everything seems like an obstacle to get to set, and that's why I'm doing two short films, is to make sure that we get all those details right, because we got so incredibly lucky. Like you can accidentally be laying out a minefield in front of yourself, um, if you don't take your time and learn all the steps correctly. So that's what I would tell any first time filmmaker is take your time. When you write a script, make sure that you get it edited. You don't necessarily need to take somebody's full advice on a script, but be open and willing to hear what people have to say to help make your film better. There's all kinds of wonderful services out there that'll edit scripts for reasonable fees as well, where
Mhm.
you can get in touch with Hollywood experts to tailor your script for what the industry wants to see out of a script. Really, the biggest thing is just take your time. And crappy audio is not a style. When you get to set, do not, get all focused on the camera and forget about the audio. Like
Yeah.
you can get away with shaky cam, you can get away with your image being blurred for a second. You cannot get away with having bad audio.
How much did your after editing? How much did your original film, your original screenplay change?
We didn't. So from what we shot to what we edited,
Yeah.
not too much. We didn't. Being an indie film, we didn't give ourselves like the equivalent of three different alternative endings or three different paths that the story could follow. We knew we had to stay rather tight to the script. And just to loop back to one of your other previous comments slash questions about trimming the fat off, I gotta say that was Jordy Day at Night School Films, my editor. Wonderful editor. And it was great, the back and forth we had through the editing. Editors want to cut. Like I joke with Jordy, I'm like, the best film, every editor's favorite film is opening credits, closing credits, done, perfect, right? Nailed it, right? Got in, got out, done, right?
Right.
So it was that working process of him wanting to keep things tight, and me trying to say it's a drama, let's let him breathe, that I think we really established that balance.
Yeah.
And by respecting each other, like, there was sometimes Jordy says, look, we just got to do it this way. And, while I'm the boss, I was like, okay, well, you laid out a good argument. Absolutely. Like we had to cut some scenes that I would have liked to see in, but if he said we had a technical issue with this, or I just don't think it really has a purpose in the film. I was like, okay.
Right. Is that hard
So
for you as as the writer? Is that hard for you to go, I really like that, but
it gets easier the more you do it. I mean, I think, again, back to advice to other filmmakers, is another one is don't take anything personal. Nobody's saying that you're a bad writer. Nobody's saying that you screwed up when they've got suggestions. It's the exact opposite. I think the better job you do, the more excited people are to contribute to it.
Mhm.
So, if you get people around you going, oh, yeah, yeah, that's great, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
When people are like, hey, I really like this film, this script, but what if we did this? And what if we did that? And what if we brought this into it? Those are great things. These aren't people trying to, you know, put their stamp on your film or so on and so forth. It's people trying to contribute to something they see as has a lot of potential. And another bit of advice that I would give to other filmmakers is don't try to stick to a formula when you're writing. Like when you're writing, don't think that it has to neatly fall into three acts and you have to have certain type of pacing. There's there's no real laws when it comes to an artistic endeavor. There's rules, and as you get better, you'll understand those rules. But that doesn't mean that your story that you're trying to tell has to follow a specific set of rules. Because some of the advice that I'd stumbled upon early was, oh, you're not following such and such a model. Like that's what people want to see. And I'm like, and I just had this suspicion and this instinct that don't do that because people sniff that out. They see that it's manufactured. They see that it's fabricated. Like, when we think of great bands, like, well, who sounds like Tool? So does that mean Tool's wrong with the type of music that they played because nobody else does it? You know what I mean? Who makes a movie like Tarantino? Does that make his artistic style of making films wrong? So I would tell other people, take what people say, but when it comes to trying to, have it follow a specific system, I wouldn't focus on that.
Right on, man. That's great advice.
It's storytelling. Not every story has to have a bird and a dog in it, right?
Yeah, right. So you got these 2 short films that you're going to work on. Are you using the same crew and cast? And
We'll be using a few for the one up in Alberta, and it'll have to be all new ones for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, with the 2 short films, that's another reason why I wanted to do 2 short films I haven't made a film in America, so I want to get familiar with that. And I want to get stronger at being a Canadian filmmaker. There's pros and cons to both. I mean, one of the benefits of Canada being a socialist country is how much government money is available to filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
And being a Canadian, even though I've lived in Texas for 5 years now, I think it's important for Canadians to continue to control our own story making. It's very easy with us being right next door to the United States of America for our culture to kind of just get overwashed by how large the American entertainment industry is. So I like to try to be the inspiration for other Canadian filmmakers to get out there and go, oh, I can actually do it. And there is an opportunity. And we do have a unique story.
Where can people find you online and anything about the movie online?
So the film is currently playing on Tubi as well as Vudu. And I think you can also buy and rent it on Apple TV and Google Play. Yeah.
And where can people find out about you?
I do have an IMDb page. I also have, there's a website for February's Dog to learn more about the film and some of the cool things behind the scenes at februarysdog.com. And then I also have my website for my production company with some of the synopsises for upcoming scripts that I've got written at luctorpictures.com, LUCTOR pictures.com. It's Latin for struggle is what Luctor is. And then our logo is Atlas holding the planet up, and that's symbolic of embrace the struggle night and day. Because it's a struggle sometimes getting an artistic venture done, isn't it?
Oh man, totally. So no matter how small, it's a struggle.
I saw it on your face right away. As soon as I said that, you're like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes it feels like herding cats. You're like, please, just general direction, please.
Right. Herding cats. Well, man, Paul, I do appreciate your time, man. I know we tried to do this a couple of times, but thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And
it was my pleasure. Thank you so much, Bernie.
Oh man, no, thank you. Anytime anyone takes time out of their day to do this, I really appreciate it. So, especially to talk about something that
thank you so much for the invite.
Genuinely enjoyed.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate hearing that. And I'm sure all the rest of the cast and crew are going to love hearing that you enjoyed it as well.
Right on, man. Was there anything else you want to promote while you're here?
No, just the film, really. Yeah, February's Dog. It's on Tubi TV. Like I said, Apple TV, Vudu, and Google TV, Google Play, Google TV, Google something.
Right on. Well, I if you've listened to the podcast, you might know what my last question is going to be. It's called "Is breakfast included?" And if we were having breakfast, what would you have?
Like just regular breakfast? Like what do I make every day, or just
anything?
Like dream breakfast.
Your dream breakfast. Let's go with that. Your dream breakfast.
Okay. Well, there's a little thing down in Texas that's jalapeno bacon. Got to have jalapeno bacon at breakfast. Have you ever had that? The bacon down here comes with jalapeno sauce on it. Amazing. Yeah. hollandaise eggs, and hash browns. Pretty simple, but
Yeah, yeah. I'm originally from just north of Houston, a town called Corsicana. I don't know if you've driven through there. So
I
that's
know a person who's made to go through there. Yeah, Stephanie, you connected us. Yeah. Actually, if you're just from north of Houston, you'll have a better idea of where we're going to shoot Ultimate Deceptio, which is Huntsville,
yeah, yeah. I'm very
Prison
familiar with
City.
Huntsville. Yeah,
Yeah.
Prison City. Was it?
Wonderful town.
Yeah, yeah. Are you gonna? Are any of the scenes gonna feature the big Sam Houston statue?
Man, that's an overlooked gem of an idea. There's a potential. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a potential we could.
Right on, man. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, the next time I'm down, I'll make a special trip. I'd love to meet you in person and take you to breakfast.
Awesome, Bernie. I'd love that, man. And
Yeah.
again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your podcast. It's a lovely
No, thank
podcast.
you, man. It was good talking to you.
You too, sir.
All right. Bye.
Paul Chinook. The movie is called February's Dog. Again, I highly suggest you check this movie out. It's really good. It's a really good movie. You can find out more about it at februarysdog.com. You can find out more about Paul at luctorpictures.com. Again, you can find the movie on Tubi, Vudu, Apple TV, and Google Play. Also, here it comes. You knew it was coming. Is breakfast.bigcartel.com. Go by, order a shirt, help us out. All right, guys, I'm done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.